The big focus right now here in India is, of course, the visit of the US President. And besides the political nature of that visit, there's also lots of speculation about what could be decided or what we might see happen on the business front between the two countries. And one person who has been not only keeping track of that pretty closely, but also now will be involved in that process very closely as well, is Mr. Anand Mahindra, the chairman of the Mahindra Group. Good to see you, Anand.
Morning.
Welcome to Delhi. And of course, the whole focus of Mr. Obama being here has taken the capital by storm. I know it's what brings you here as well. Just set this off for us by sort of setting the tone for it. The relevance of how big this is. Are we overplaying it, or is it necessarily that big?
If you ask me what does it mean in business terms, then yes, I think we have to recalibrate our expectations lower. I'm not looking to this summit to result in some very specific outcomes like you would expect at a state summit where you say, I've signed 100 MOUs. Don't expect anything like that. On the other hand, in terms of significance, geopolitically, is this big? It's enormous. It's not a small thing that President Obama agreed to come and accept the Prime Minister's invitation at fairly short notice, if you really look at it. And for Prime Minister Modi, after years of exclusion by the US, to extend this invitation, that was pretty big too. So if you ask yourself, why did they do it? What is happening? Well, my interpretation of it is that President Obama is not coming here as a salesman. He's not coming here as the front line for US businessmen and trying to just get access to the Indian market. I believe he's telling India that you belong on the world stage. You belong right up there when we take decisions that impact the world politically, not just from an economic standpoint. And I believe that that Prime Minister Modi is one Indian Prime Minister who frankly thinks that India does belong on the world stage. If you look at his actions right after having become Prime Minister, there was some criticism about his traveling around. But frankly, what he was signaling was that we are ready to take responsibility for playing a bigger role in global decision making. So maybe I'm adding too much hyperbole to it, but I'm very excited because I believe we finally have a Prime Minister willing to step up to bat and to take the kind of responsibility and accountability for global affairs, for global crises, for being part of the solution. And here is President Obama, by accepting Prime Minister Modi's invitation, is saying, I think you belong at the high table. So this is very important.
So India can sort of play with the big boys now and not just be in the shadows or the sidelines.
Sometimes I wonder whether we were on the sidelines voluntarily. We just somehow didn't have that self-esteem. We didn't think we belonged there. This is a new regime that thinks that we have to do many things, of course. We have to, first of all, we have to attack our poverty. We are never going to be taken completely seriously if we continue to be a poverty-stricken nation with the kind of deprivation that we suffer here. But as we know, we are moving on many fronts. We are hopefully going to be the fastest growing economy in the world a few years from now. So we are taking care of that aspect of whether or not we belong at the high table. So as long as we move on the economic front too and become a powerful economic nation, then we certainly have the right to speak out on matters of global significance. And we have a Prime Minister who's willing to assume that mantle. That's the first one. And since you asked, Sid, let me say there's another very interesting symbolism about this. It is the first time that India is acknowledging that we are natural partners of the US. The US uses that phrase all the time. But I think this is time to move beyond that old cliche of the world's largest democracy and the world's oldest democracy. Frankly, I'm tired of hearing that. I really don't want to hear it once again because it's such a cliche. But the fact really is that we belong together because we have the same words beginning our constitution, we the people. We started out by a focus on the individual. That's what I think we really share with America. It's about individualism, which America is very strongly focused on. Now, of course, what happened was that we lost our way, if you will. Somehow, with our experiments with socialism, the individual got moved out. And we thought we were serving the individual through socialism, but perhaps we weren't. whereas America remained focused relentlessly on individual and has benefited from that. I think we are moving back with the collaborative federalism, with participative citizenry that the Niti Aayog manifesto talks about. I think we are moving back to a focus on the individual. So it's perfect timing for India and America to recognize each other again. It's like, it's like the Hindi movie where suddenly the brothers discover each other and shout, "Bhaiya, Bhaiya." I think it's that kind of moment, if you will, happening between India and the US.
Well, the hug between the Prime Minister and the President this morning has certainly evoked that kind of sentiment as well. The point you make, Anand, is of course a very valid, fair point and a realistic one about, let's not expect big bang announcements or lots of MOUs to be signed. But given the significance of that symbolism, do you think it sort of opens doors towards such announcements in the near future?
I think your question is almost rhetorical. Yes, of course it does, because you need to create the climate, so to speak, within which people begin talking to each other, with people in a climate in which people are encouraged and feel that they will get a positive reception. So all those climatic aspects, if you will be served extremely well by this trip. There is word, of course, this morning that they are close to coming to some kind of agreement on the nuclear deal and removing the hindrances there. That would be wonderful. I certainly think it's in both our interests. After all, nuclear power is ultimately a clean power, and it is frankly cheaper than coal today. Ironically, even though coal is, if the projects are built on time, it's cheaper than coal. So it's an enormous opportunity for India to diversify its sources of energy. And frankly, at 20 crore per megawatt, even the first phase of nuclear power is a 16 billion opportunity for American companies, Westinghouse and Hitachi. So I believe there's huge mutual benefit and mutual interest in coming to some kind of agreement on this trip. I hope the speculation is correct, and that they will be able to come to some kind of agreement where both sides find a way of compromising. The US on its tracking requirements and India on its liability laws, and perhaps I believe there is some kind of way in which they're going to work around this. If that happens, it'll be wonderful.
Given that there has been a deadlock there, and also now given that the news suggests that it's the Prime Minister and the US President who are going to directly now try and work out a solution, it kind of shows what's at stake here. I mean, this is not really a deal breaker if it doesn't work out, but it needs to work out.
For the reasons I mentioned, I clearly think it does. And when you have large companies like this working and getting embedded into the Indian project management system, it only bodes well for there to be a tremendous multiplier effect, both in terms of industrial activity as well as in technology transfer.
Now, the last time the President visited, and of course this is again symbolic, the fact that he's making a second trip to India, but we heard a lot of this, not specific to the nuclear deal, but about what it's going to do for the business environment and the two business communities coming together. There was, of course, the forum that was set up, the Indo-US CEO Forum. We haven't seen too much happen post that. So talk us through that. I mean, when this was set up, it was set up in earnest, but do you think it really achieved what it was supposed to?
I have joined the forum for this trip, and one of my views is that we should not once again set enormously high expectations of what the forum itself can achieve. Everyone in the forum has a day job. We all go away and have to work on our own individual projects, our own work as well as our own interests in the Indo-US collaboration. To my mind, the Indo-US CEO Forum has to provide principally access to both sides who are interested in penetrating the business markets of either country. Why on earth would a US CEO pay attention to the Indo-US CEO Forum unless he felt it provided him visibility into the government system or into the system of implementation in India? Why on earth would it make sense for me to spend my time unless I felt it gave me access to decision makers on the American political as well as economic side? So let's keep the expectations of this forum in line. I was a member of another forum, to be honest, another country, I will let it go unnamed, And during those deliberations, there were enormous targets and aspirations. Said, let's do a kind of a prototype pilot project together. Let's do a showcase demonstration project. And I said, who's the owner of this project? They said, the Forum. I said, the Forum? I said, I've got to go back to my job right now, and I need scarce resources of my own. And sure enough, nothing really happened. And then when you have a mismatch between the stated aspiration and outcomes, then these things tend to sort of wither away and lose credibility. So my key point is that we must understand that this is providing a forum where both sides should feel that they are getting a kind of single window into the opportunities of each country. If we achieve that and create that credibility of the forum, we would have done a lot.
But does the government support that single window approach? Because I think what we're trying to understand is, how is a forum different from a business delegation? I mean, any head of state who visits usually does have certain, people from the business community in tow. Why the need for a forum as opposed to what usually happens?
Well, these are the things we are going to be discussing today and tomorrow in the forum. So I'll be able to tell you later whether the governments, both sides, agree or not on my contention and are willing to provide, let's call it, improved access or specialized access. Now, the very fact that President Obama and Prime Minister Modi are meeting the CEO Forum separately is an indication already that that access is being granted. So that's a step. But one of the points certainly we intend to make is that can we continue to have some kind of privileged access which allows the members of the forum to feel that they are getting a deeper look and a deeper access into each side's decision makers.
If you could actually expand a little bit on that for us. I mean, that is one expectation, clearly. What is the agenda, let's say, that the Indian side of the CEO Forum goes in with? Because have you had the chance to discuss this in great detail?
We are in fact having a meeting today to discuss that. So I think it would be wrong for me to preempt what the forum comes up with. There is a strawman agenda that has been created for the discussions. It's a very detailed and elaborate agenda which has been assembled from the joint inputs of all the members and their staff. So we will be deliberating on that. So I think it might be a little premature for me to comment on what would be the final points and items that we put in front of the leaders. And don't forget, we've got to meet our counterparts as well from the American side, which we will do tomorrow before we come up with a finalized agenda.
But it will be one agenda. It's not going
Absolutely.
to be various views
Absolutely.
coming to the table at that point.
No, there will have to be some kind of consensus reached and then placed before the leaders.
The relevance of course, we've seen who is on the Indian side, and we of course are aware of some of the names from the US side as well. Is there a key focus area, you think, or is it really just everything is on the table when it comes to sectors?
Once again, in all honesty, and this is not that I'm being evasive, there is a preparatory meeting today. So if there is going to be one key point that we land on jointly with the US side, that will only be an outcome right before the meeting with the leaders when they enter the room. So again, I'd be preempting something without knowing it. It's not as if it's something that is confidential. Sure. There's a whole short list of things that we have made, and we need to discuss these with our US counterparts, and then we will come up with a finalized agenda.
In your view, though, what are some of the sectors? I mean, the nuclear space is clearly one area where both sides are looking for cooperation, but what are some of the other sectors that matter to us when it comes to the US?
Oh, there's a whole grab bag of things which come in terms of access to technology, particularly in the renewables area, or whether they be in the high-tech area. There are things that we would want in terms of improved investment from the venture capital communities in the West Coast in order to create a kind of conducive entrepreneurial ecosystem, our own Silicon Valley, if you will. We would like a little more assertive participation by bodies like OPIC and EXIM in providing guarantees, investment guarantees in certain targeted areas. So there's a whole host of things which one could look forward to in all of these areas, which in fact are key thrust areas for the leaders as well: the nuclear, the defense, climate change and participation in renewables, for example, is a very, very important area. So everything is on the table right now, and as I said, one would hope that we could narrow it down so that there could be a very concise set of items on the agenda that is placed before these leaders, where we'll have about a half hour with them tomorrow.
Areas like the defense space, there is also this larger theme that's developed over the past couple of months of Make in India. Is that again something that you think takes center stage, given how important the Prime Minister sees that?
I think it's extremely important, Siddharth, and the reason is very simple. This is the first Prime Minister who I believe has understood the value and significance in a large country like ours of establishing a military-industrial complex. Now that word unfortunately has become a pejorative word because it was the target of all the protesters during the 60s. But if you remove that pejorative aspect of it, the fact is that a substantial amount of America's innovation and technology advancements have come from the military-industrial complex. Not just hardware, even the simple, humble Gantt chart for project management, the critical path analysis that one does for projects, all came out of the American Armed Forces and those kinds of developments, and then collaboration with the private sector. So I believe our Prime Minister viscerally understands that there is an enormous cost in simply procuring all your defense equipment outside. And it's not in terms of dollars and cents. It's not a question of having the currency or not. India has the means to buy all its defense needs outside. But I believe what we would be foregoing, unless you make in India, is having this very vibrant source, this fountainhead of technology, which this kind of collaboration brings. If we are going to spend these billions on defense, then why not get the technology and innovation rub-off which America has been getting for decades? That is the big benefit, I think, that will happen from a Make in India thrust for defense procurement.
And similarly for other sectors too.
Absolutely, but the defense is the big daddy of all of them because of the amounts that are being spent, because of the high technology involved. It is critical for India to have this factor when we spend this money. Otherwise, we are spending billions with no rub-off to India.
So to stitch this up, the cynics have argued now for the last few weeks and months that the euphoria around the Modi government coming to power with its mandate and all the talk about this fantastic little bounce back that the economy was expected to go through hasn't happened. There hasn't been a big bang announcement. There hasn't been a massive policy shift. We've seen little bits and pieces from the finance minister. What needs to happen from that perspective, politically, economically, to sort of facilitate this new rush of investments and the change that we're looking for?
I have never been a believer in the Big Bang Theory. I love the TV show, but I'm not a believer in the theory.
Yeah.
I think what is needed is consistent, everyday reform. Smaller the better. But
it's not about the budget. It's not
about the budget. I've always said that. I never come on TV talking about the budget for that reason. I think it's gotten undue attention. What we need to press on the government and put pressure on them is a reform a day, however small it is. And I'm not disappointed with what's happening so far. If you really look at the scorecard, it's a fairly impressive one in terms of consistent reforms and new things being announced. Of course, there is an impediment in terms of the Rajya Sabha getting it cleared. There's been criticism of the ordinances, but I'm all in favor of them if that's what is needed in order to get a reform a day going. I believe that there has also been this external exogenous benefit of the oil prices, which is very timely. I wish we were also lucky as leaders. But that combined with these reforms coming in are, I think, allowing us to see green shoots. Our construction equipment business, our fledgling one, is seeing orders come in, and that's the first indication that some ground is being broken somewhere. It's not only talk and MOUs and investment promises, but investment on the ground is happening. I think you gradually, by the first quarter of next fiscal year, you will see a revival in the economy, aided again by those exogenous factors. The one thing that is left is really the ease of doing business. It's much more important to have ease of doing business for Indian companies. Forget worrying about FDI. FDI is important. The bulk of investment in the economy still comes from local investment. So for God's sake, let's make it easy to do business here. We need to move everything online. We need to have no paper trails. We need to remove the small unnecessary steps to start a business. We need to make it easier to put up physical infrastructure like warehouses. It takes 207 days in Delhi and 30 permissions or something like that to create a warehouse. How can you do business easily? That to me is a missing link, and combined with GST, That will be that will be the real punch. That will be the coup de grace which will allow the Indian economy to take off.
All right. Well, that's a positive enough note to end on. We certainly hope all these things do happen soon enough. I hope you have a productive couple of days here.
Thank you so much.